Okay, so we're still working with equations that have just an x squared term, but not the bx term. When there's a little bit more steps involved in solving, what you're going to do is, as you solve, you're going to isolate x squared. You want to get x squared alone. All right, so if we look at this equation, we have 7x squared equals 112. Actually, I'll just rewrite that. 7x squared equals 112. So you guys are going to like these equations because you already know how to solve. Like, you know how to get this x squared by itself. It is being multiplied by the 7, so we're going to do the opposite of that. We're going to divide by 7. 7's cancel, so we get x squared equals 16. And now you could solve by inspection and say, oh, well, x is a 4 and a negative 4. So we could say x equals positive and negative 4. You'll hear me say plus or minus 4. I think I've been saying that my whole mathematical life, but really positive 4, negative 4. If we were to undo the operation of squaring, the opposite of squaring is to square root. So we're going to get to some problems where we are taking the square root of both sides. Remember, what is the square root of x squared? X. That's something that we did in our last lesson. And then the square root of 16 is 4, and we do have to remember to include the negative 4 as a solution as well. All right, part B, isolate the x squared. So here's our x squared. You're going to see me circle that a lot. We're going to get that by itself. X squared is being multiplied by a negative 3. So let's divide both sides by negative 3. Those cancel. We're going to carry down x squared equals negative 24 divided by negative 3 is a positive 8. So let's be really careful with our signs. If we said this was a negative 8 right here, if we just didn't catch the negative divided by negative turns positive, if we had a negative 8, we know we can't square a number to get a negative result, so we would say there's no real solution. But really, positive 8. So we don't want to make that mistake. Can I square a number and get 8 as my result? No, 8 is not a perfect square, which is why I can't square a number to get 8. So here's where we're going to take the square root of both sides. The square root of x squared is x. I know that I get two solutions, a positive solution and a negative solution. And now that we know how to reduce radicals, we're going to reduce that square root of 8. Are there any perfect squares that fit into 8? And we say, oh yeah, 4 times 2. And 4 is our perfect square. Square root of 4 is 2, and that 2 stays underneath. So x equals, we've got the 2 out, or the plus or minus, the 2 out front, and then square root of 2. So that's just a reduced radical answer. All right, we have a couple other questions. What are the solutions for each equation? So we're going to solve. If the solution is not a perfect square, kind of like what we had up here, this 8 was not a perfect square, state what two integers the solution is between. So let's just start by solving for our x squared. So we isolate it. Here's the x squared. It's being multiplied by 5, so we're going to divide both sides by 5. Those 5's cancel. We have x squared equals 125 divided by 5 is 25. Oh, I know what number I can square to get 25, so I'm just going to say x equals a positive and a negative 5. We also could have just square rooted both sides, same thing. All right, so part B, we've got our x squared. We're going to isolate this. It's being multiplied by negative 1/2. So I'm going to divide by negative 1/2. We have so many ways to deal with fractions and equations. This is one of them. Just divide by, if you're multiplying by the negative 1/2, you can divide by it. So x squared equals, so the negative 36 divided by the negative 1/2, I know it will go positive. Then how many halves fit into 36? And that's going to be 72. So, is 72 a perfect square? Do we square a number to get 72 as the result? And we do not. So we're going to continue solving. Square root both sides. Square root of x squared is x. equals, we know it's a positive and a negative. Remember, x squared gives us 2 answers, and then square root of 72. We are going to reduce that radical, but let's answer this question. It says, if the solution is not a perfect square, state what 2 integers the solution is between. So this just uses a little bit of number sense. We're looking at, not 74, the square root of 72. Well, what numbers do you know the square root of that are near 72? You might say, well, I know the square root of 64. That's 8. And we know the square root of 81. That's 9. So square root of 72 must be somewhere between an 8 and a 9. So it's 8 point something. So what 2 integers is the solution between? It's between an 8 and a 9. If we were using the negative values, we would say between a -8 and a -9. All right, so let's go ahead and reduce our radical. We've got square root of 72. The perfect square that fits into this is 36, fits in 2 times. Square root of 36 is 6. That 2 is going to stay underneath our radical. So final answer, positive and negative, that 6 goes out front and the 2 stays underneath the radical, and x equals plus or minus 6 root 2.